Welcome. Today, I'll be walking you through the California Dyslexia Guidelines. My name is Yesenia Cedillo, and in this presentation, we'll break down the guidelines, discuss eligibility criteria, and explore how we can effectively communicate this process to both parents and school personnel. The guidelines were developed to give schools a clear framework for understanding and supporting students with dyslexia. The guidelines start by defining dyslexia and outlining its key characteristics. Dyslexia is a complex learning disability, and understanding its full definition is important. To give you a moment to absorb this, please feel free to pause the video and read through the full definition on the screen. Once you've read through the definition, let me break it down in simpler terms. Dyslexia is a learning disability that affects how the brain processes language. It often leads to trouble recognizing words, spelling, and sounding them out. These challenges usually come from difficulty working with the sounds in language, which can seem unexpected given a student's abilities and classroom learning. As a result, students with dyslexia may also struggle with reading comprehension and have less exposure to new words, slowing their vocabulary growth. The guidelines stress the importance of identifying dyslexia early, ideally in kindergarten or first grade. Early intervention is key, as the sooner dyslexia is recognized, the sooner we can offer the right support to help students succeed. As shown on the screen, the guidelines recommend using a multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS, to offer varying levels of help based on each student's needs. The guidelines also require universal screenings for all students, ideally starting in kindergarten or first grade. This early screening identifies students at risk for dyslexia before more serious challenges develop, allowing us to provide supports quickly and minimize the impact of their academic growth. While we aim to support all students with reading difficulties, not all issues are due to dyslexia. The guidelines stress that certain factors must be ruled out first, such as inadequate instruction, physical impairments, intellectual disabilities, emotional issues, or environmental and cultural influences. Limited English proficiency must also be ruled out. Once these are excluded, we can move forward with a comprehensive evaluation to determine if dyslexia is the cause. The guidelines recommend evaluating several key areas. One of the main areas is phonological processing, which is how well a student can break down and work with the sounds in words, a critical skill for reading. Another area is word decoding, which looks at how well a student can sound out unfamiliar words. We also assess reading fluency, which is the speed and accuracy of reading, and reading comprehension, which focuses on how well the student understands what they've read. Finally, we review spelling and writing, looking at grammar and sentence structure, as well as cognitive abilities like memory and processing speed. This comprehensive evaluation helps us understand the students' challenges and how best to support them. In addition to evaluating key areas like reading skills, the guidelines emphasize the importance of looking at broader factors for a full understanding. Family and developmental history are important because dyslexia often runs in families, and understanding early language development helps us better understand each student's challenges. We also review the student's previous interventions and instruction to see if difficulties continue despite support. It's essential to consider cultural, linguistic, and environmental factors to rule out outside influences on their learning. Teacher and parent reports provided insight into academic, behavioral, and emotional well-being, while classroom observations and work samples shows how students perform with reading and writing tasks. By looking at these broader factors, we can better understand the students' needs and offer the right supports. To determine if a student qualifies for dyslexia services, the guidelines offer three main approaches. First is the severe discrepancy model, which looks for a significant gap between a student's intellectual ability and their academic performance, like in reading or writing. A large gap may suggest a learning disability. Second, the response to intervention, RTI. It Checks if the student still struggles with grade level standards even after receiving proper instruction and targeted interventions. If challenges remain, they might qualify for additional supports. Lastly, the pattern of strengths and weaknesses (PSW) approach identifies patterns in performance. For example, a student might be strong in reasoning but struggle with phonological processing, which can indicate dyslexia. Once a student qualifies for dyslexia services, the guidelines recommend using structured literacy as the main instructional approach. This method is designed specifically to meet the unique needs of students with dyslexia by providing instruction that is targeted, systematic, and multisensory. Finally, the guidelines stress the legal rights of parents and students under both state and federal law. These rights ensures that students with dyslexia receive the necessary accommodations and, if eligible, special education services. By knowing and using these legal rights, we can make sure students with dyslexia get the right supports and protections to help them succeed. Now let's walk through a scenario to see how we would explain the guidelines and eligibility process to a parent in a real-world situation. In this case, a first grade student was identified as reading below grade level. Despite receiving targeted interventions throughout the school year and additional support at home over the summer, the student has made limited progress. As the student enters second grade, the parent has requested a formal evaluation for dyslexia. Before deciding to move forward, we first need to determine if a formal evaluation is necessary. In this case, the student hasn't responded well to interventions, and there are no other factors, like lack of instruction or language barriers, that explain the reading difficulties. While this is just an example with limited information, in a real scenario, we'd gather additional data to make an informed decision. Based on the details provided and the guidelines, we would recommend going ahead with a comprehensive evaluation in this case. This will help us confirm or rule out dyslexia and figure out the best support services for the student. When talking with a parent, it's important to first acknowledge their concerns about their child's reading progress. Showing understanding and emphasizing the value of their involvement is key, as parental advocacy is a positive and important part of the process. Next, we'd explain that we follow the dyslexia guidelines, which guides us through the screening process and evaluation to see if a student qualifies for services. Their child's participation in interventions shows how we use the multi-tiered system of supports MTSS to help students. Finally, we'd reassure the parent that the evaluation will help us identify the most effective interventions, ensuring their child gets the support they need to succeed academically. We'd explain that the evaluation process is comprehensive, considering not just the interventions the student has already received, but also their development, their background, and educational history. This gives us a full understanding of the student's needs, and we'd stress the importance of parent input and collaboration throughout. We'd also clarify that assessments focus on specific areas, like how the student processes sounds, decodes words, and reads fluently. Next, we'd explain the eligibility model, which in this case would be the pattern of strengths and weaknesses (PSW) model. If parents are interested, we could briefly mention specific assessments that we use, though these are usually discussed in more detail during the eligibility meetings. After the evaluation, the team will review the results to see if the student qualifies for a learning disability like dyslexia. Parents play a key role throughout this process. They'll be involved in important steps such as eligibility meetings and developing the IEP or 504 plan. If the student qualifies, we'll work together to create a personalized plan focused on reading development and school success. We'd highlight that the parent's role is essential from start to finish, and their involvement is crucial to creating the best plan for their child. Lastly, we thank the parent for their commitment as it's vital to ensuring the best outcome for their child. Before we wrap up, here are a few strategies for working with families. First, every family is different, so it's important to adjust communication to fit their needs. Some may require more support, while others need less. Not all details of the guidelines will apply to every parent. If they're familiar with the process, keep it brief, but if more explanation is needed, provide it. Finally, stay flexible. Some parents will have lots of questions, while others may not. Being adaptable helps ensure parents feel supported and informed. Empathy and patience are essential. The process can be overwhelming, so compassion builds trust and reassurance. Encourage open communication, letting parents know they can always reach out with questions. Lastly, acknowledge their involvement. Their commitment is key for their child's success and makes a big difference in achieving the best outcomes. To ensure the information presented is both accurate and reliable, we have drawn from multiple trusted sources, including the California Dyslexia Guidelines and other leading expert resources on dyslexia. This page provides key references that have informed this presentation. Thank you for your time and attention today. I hope this presentation has given you a clear understanding of the California Dyslexia Guidelines, the steps we take in identifying and supporting students with dyslexia, and the vital role parents play throughout the process. Together, we can ensure every student receives the support they need to succeed.